Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Alfonso David. I am the president and the CEO of the Global Black Economic Forum. I'm also a civil rights lawyer.
And I am Ebony McMorris, White House correspondent for American Urban Radio Network. And I'm so pleased to be here tonight for Paint the Polls Black. Alfonso, are you ready?
I am ready. I am ready. And for everyone, as you may know, this November, we are confronting a major election year with history and the rights of marginalized communities on the ballot. The disparities that Black and Brown people confront in this country are significant and growing, from housing and employment to access to healthcare and access to capital. Tonight, the Sundial group of companies, which includes Essence, the Global Black Economic Forum, Girls United, Afropunk, Refinery 29, BeautyCon, and the New Voices Foundation, are coming together along with our partners to mobilize and ensure that we educate, mobilize, and register voters to take action this November and into the future.
Look, to support this work, we are launching the 2024 Paint the Polls Black campaign. Now, this campaign is tailored to provide information, address misinformation and lies, and register voters for one of the most consequential elections in our lifetimes. We will be joined by a few special, amazing guests, and we'll be answering important questions from all of you about voting, elections, and the issues affecting our communities. So we got a few housekeeping rules. First, this is a nonpartisan call focused on voter registration and mobilization. Further, this ain't a fundraising call, so you can keep your money in your pocket for now. There are other events for fundraising. We will also be answering your questions, so please put your questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer as many as we can before the end of the town hall.
Also, please see the link for voter registration. If you have not registered to vote, please do. Go to www.paintthepollsblack, #PaintThePollsBlack, and please register to vote. And finally, sit back, relax, and enjoy this town hall.
All right, y'all, we're going to get right into it. Y'all ready? This is going to be a wonderful conversation. How excited are you, Alfonso?
I am excited. We have two fantastic members of Congress joining us, but I'll let you take it away.
First, please welcome Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett from the House of Representatives for Texas, 30th Congressional District, great state of Texas. Also joining us is Congresswoman Chantel Brown from the great state of Ohio, hailing from Ohio's 11th District. Thank you both for joining us today.
It's good to see both of you.
Look, before we begin, I think it is only right for us to pause just for a moment and remember the life of the late, great Sheila Jackson Lee. There's a memorial service being held today for her, who's hailing from the great state of Texas. But I think we would be remiss if we did not stop for a second, just for a couple of seconds, and think about this hero. Thank you all for that. Sometimes I think we just have to stop and sometimes think about what we are missing, and we are missing her so much right now. Before we begin the conversation, actually, Representative Crockett, I wanted to just ask you let people know what this line is, who she was, and how we will miss the work and the legacy that she has left behind.
Yeah, what's interesting is that we were reminded that she is of Jamaican descent. Yes. And one of the jokes that we would always talk about when it came to Sheila is that she was always in 50 meetings at one time, right? So her body would physically be in one meeting, and then she'd be on Zoom with somebody else with the headphones. But listen, as much as we joked, this is a woman who worked all the time. Even when she was sick, on her deathbed, she never stopped working. She believed that the people, specifically the people of Texas, deserved better. And when it came down to representing people, while she was elected to represent Texas 18th Congressional District, that is famously known because Barbara Jordan held that seat as the first Black woman to ever go to Congress from Texas, she also made sure that she never, ever lost sight of the fact that she was a Black woman in America. And so being able to celebrate Juneteenth is because she never gave up. She was the fighter at all times for reparations, as well as the George Floyd policing act. I mean, this is a woman that never stopped and never lost focus of community. And community wasn't just her district, but it was Black folks. So definitely, she will sorely be missed. But I can tell you, as the next generation is trying to do our part, Chantel and I will continue to fight and make sure that her legacy continues to live on and that her legislation doesn't die with her, but it continues on until we finally get to the promised land and actually start to see a United States that really starts to respect and love us wholly, not just in word, but also in legislation.
Congresswoman Brown, I want you to also talk about what her life meant and what she has represented for you.
She was just a powerhouse. You know, I grew up watching her on C-SPAN and on MSNBC, you know, the news stations, and she always spoke with such command, such confidence. And she had, if you heard her, she had this booming voice, you know, Sheila would, it just came through, and she just commanded the room no matter where she was. And so I was, to my surprise, when I first met her, I'm like, this little petite powerhouse. Like, she was just so, but it was like, I imagined her to be this tall woman, but she might have been 5 something, but she was 6'7" in spirit. Okay. Because she did not back down from anything. She was fearless. She was a fighter. And she really just, as Jasmine articulated, always showed up and put people first. And we joked about, you know, her being never shy from a camera. You know, she will always be in position, but it was a historical context to that because she left an imprint of what we could aspire to be. Had I not seen her in those images growing up, I would not know that this is a space and place where I could be. And so, I'm just honored to be able to say when the history books are written that I was able to serve with her.
Whew. That's so powerful. That's so powerful. Well, look, we are here to not just carry on her legacy, but to talk about issues affecting Black America and to mobilize, to talk about voter mobilization. I just want to quickly get your reactions. And Alfonso and I talked about this at great length before about the NABJ conference, where we saw 3 Black journalists interviewing former President Donald Trump. And the controversy ensued whether or not she should have been there or not. But then after that, some of the comments that were made. Representative Crockett, what was your reaction to that town hall where that panel discussion?
Hotmess.com. Hotmess.com. That's all I got to say about it. But listen, regardless of where you stand about NABJ and how they handled, you know, Trump showing up and how they handled the VP and that kind of stuff, I think that it was important for us to have this moment because, number one, I think that Trump has not been pushed as all candidates should be pushed when you are trying to be the leader of the free world. You should be asked questions, and when you don't answer those questions, you should be redirected. And what's interesting is that it's almost like, not almost, he took offense that there were Black women journalists that were basically trying to get him to do what journalists are supposed to always do with him, which is to get him to answer questions. Instead, he decided that he was going to insult them as well and call them nasty, and talk about how rude they were and things like that, when all they were doing is actual like journalism, which again, Project 2025, which is a nonpartisan thing, allegedly, because it comes from the Heritage Foundation, which is 501c3. But it talks about things such as the media and basically, as far as if I was to summarize it, getting rid of the free press. And I feel as if we've seen a consolidation when it comes to the media in general, because he's not been pressed. And now that he actually was like, had journalists that wanted to do their jobs, He didn't know how to handle it, because when he went to do his debate on CNN, they didn't do their jobs, that's for sure. But Chantel, I'm sure you got something to add.
I saw the text that you put out on Twitter, on X, and you said shut his BS down mid sentence. But there was also this question, and Representative Brown, I want to ask you about this, about challenging Blackness in America, and that is something that is not just subject to that, but we have seen over and over this challenge of Blackness, having to prove Blackness. What were you thinking as you were watching, or were you able to even watch that panel?
I caught some of it, and my text, I was flabbergasted. But a zebra doesn't change its stripes and leopards don't change their spots. This was typical Donald Trump. When he can't speak or answer a question, he defaults to attacks and name calling, and it's really petty, and it's really immature, and it really is lackluster leadership on his part. And it was on full display for all the world to see. And I really love the fact that it was Black women once again holding him accountable. From the prosecutor in New York to the prosecutor in Georgia, to now him having to deal with the prosecutor as his candidate to face to hold the highest office in the land. Black women have been his greatest adversaries and really holding him accountable for his dastardly deeds. And so I was really grateful for the women who were on that stage, who kept their composure, who held their own, made sure they were confronting him with the facts, and he just tried to bulldozer them, which is something he's always done. So that should not have come as a surprise. But I was pleased with the representation that we had on that stage, however difficult that interview would have been, because he is not the type of person that you're going to get an easier interview out of regardless. So I do believe when it comes to folks like him and his MAGA minions, they have no bottom, they have no boundaries. Just when I think they can't get any lower, they prove me wrong. And he did just that yesterday on the stage.
Congresswoman Crockett, I had a chance to interview you when a Global Black Economic Forum had an event at Essence, and in that we quickly spoke about Project 2025, and you just mentioned that. I don't think people really, or maybe they're really beginning to understand the depth and seriousness of Project 2025, and how this is not something that we are just seeing now, but it has been in the works. When we see some of the reform that has come down from the Supreme Court, that is a part of the Project 2025 playlist. So when we talk about voter mobilization, ordering, and why people need to get to the polls, I just want you to double down and let people know what this is and why this matters in their decision.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Right now, we see that the campaign that is most closely aligned with Project 2025 is trying to run away from it with their hair on fire. Like, wait a minute, we didn't know. Yeah, okay. So many of these people worked in the previous administration, and supposedly we're going to work potentially in the next administration if Trump was to win. And so basically they decided that they were going to play in our faces, and basically thought, well, we'll just hide it in 1,000 pages and they'll never read it. But we want to make sure that our sycophants are able to see in detail exactly what it is that we are trying to do. But as you already stated, as someone who came from the state house, this is just my first term in Congress. When I was in the state house last session, we had to deal with things such as CRT, where they basically commandeered and changed the definition of CRT and decided that they just did not want Black history taught in our schools. Well, that's a part of Project 2025 and making that a nationwide situation. When we look at these 6-week abortion bans that started to go into place, what we had was we called a vigilante bill. They called it the heartbeat bill, but that bill was something that they handed down to the state of Texas. They handed it to Florida. We know that Iowa just got their 6-week ban. So the Heritage Foundation has been coming up with this legislation and has been passing it through to Republicans in mostly Republican-controlled houses to try to push this legislation through. And then we get to the Supreme Court, where we know that the previous administration stole some kind of seats on the Supreme Court. I mean, it depends on who you're talking to, how many of those seats were stolen. But nevertheless, the whole point was to get a court that would not necessarily adhere to the Constitution nor court precedents, but would do basically what Project 2025 wants to do, which is to consolidate power within the presidency or the executor. And so we've got things such as getting rid of the Department of Education is one of those things. Department of Justice, which we know is separate and apart from the president, as we've seen the current president's son has gone through the justice system, has been convicted. That would not necessarily happen because this power would be consolidated. Not to mention all the work that we did for the Affordable Care Act. They know that it's not popular to decide that you want to roll that back and get rid of pre-existing conditions being an issue that you don't have to deal with. And all of the things that we have, we still know that there's a long way that we need to go when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to economics, when it comes to our overall prospects in this country. But instead, everything that is in this playbook is more so reminiscent of the 1950s and the 1960s. And so it is important that you understand that this is dangerous and it's not a game, and it's not just politicians out here just talking our heads off. You need to read it for yourself. Don't trust what I say. Just go ahead and Google, because I get that it is tough to trust politicians nowadays. But I'm going to tell y'all, like I tell everybody else, my life was a little simpler before Congress. I didn't have death threats before Congress, and I actually dealt with real life murderers as a criminal defense attorney. Like, my life was a little simpler. A lot less people knew my name. It was a lot simpler. But I am here because I care. I am here because I believe that we, specifically as Black folk, deserve our fair share. And Chantel and I serve as only one of less than 60 Black women to ever get a seat at this table. And when we take up that seat, we understand that there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that came with our ability to sit at that table. And we don't have the luxury of trying to pretend as if we're not Black. We don't have the luxury of trying to pretend like we don't know how we got there. We are there to do the work. So I'm telling y'all because I love you and I care, but I'm also telling you, like, trust but verify. So go ahead and get your own receipts. Y'all know I'm the congresswoman that's already always got the receipts, but like, legitimately, just Google it, and don't just go out and vote yourself. Make sure that you tell somebody else in your circle who doesn't want to listen to a politician, and tell them why it matters to them and that it's important that they get out and they vote as well.
Alfonso, when GBEF was putting together the panels for Essence, one issue I know you wanted to make sure we talked about and hammered on, in addition to everything else, was really digging into Project 2025, because you really had a passion for people understanding what's at stake here.
It's incredibly important because, this is a hashtag that people now know about, but unfortunately don't have a lot of information about what it is. But I think, to what the Congresswoman was saying, this is a framework for redefining government, for really redefining how we operate within government, and potentially removing fundamental rights that Black and Brown people have. So this is an important topic that I think all of us should be very, very aware of, because it should inform how we think about voting, how we think about registration, how we think about the rights of our communities, because it will be directly impacted by whether and how you vote. So for some of you who are joining us, this is Paint the Polls Black, which is a town hall led by Essence and the Global Black Economic Forum and Afropunk and Girls United and a bunch of other organizations, companies that are coming together to make sure that we mobilize voters, that we educate voters, that we provide the tools that you need to make sure that you can exercise your constitutional right to vote. We will be joined by a number of other special guests. We're joined by two fantastic Congresspeople right now, Jasmine Crockett and Chantel Brown, who will also be joined by Bakari Sellers and others coming up very, very soon. So we want to make sure that you all stick around. But I'll turn it back over to Ebony, who has a few more questions for both Congresswoman Crockett and Congresswoman Brown.
I want to switch just a little bit, because we mentioned reproductive rights, but I really want people to understand what's at stake when it comes to that. Since Roe was overturned in 2022, 14 states have enacted near total abortion bans, while 4 states, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, Iowa, have banned abortion past roughly 6 weeks of pregnancy. Others we see enacting laws or held ballot referendums to protect abortion rights. And I'm glad we have this on here. For me, this was such an important topic because I was telling Alfonso before this, as someone who might have been labeled a childless Catwoman, I am raising a niece whose mother died before I got married, been trying to conceive, have not been able to, had a miscarriage, and I am sitting in a hospital room because my body could not expel a child, but I was in such pain. I'm watching another Black woman, I know that because I know the pain, have a miscarriage at the same time while her boyfriend or husband is trying to figure out how he can help her. What was going through my mind is how many women in southern states are going through the same thing, but they don't even have the ability to get the help that they need. And many times their families end up burying them because they could not have access to any type of care, any type of abortion pill that would have helped. And so this has had massive and devastating consequences, especially when we talk about Black maternal care. Congresswoman Brown, I want to get your take on why reproductive rights is definitely on the table.
Well, thank you. And just my sincerest regard relative to your situation. So many Black women deal with infant mortality, maternal mortality issues. Before coming to Congress, I served on Cuyahoga County, and during the times of the pandemic, we started to recognize the disparities specifically as they impact Black communities. And that conversation was only elevated by the tragic death of George Floyd. I bring that up because that was the foundation for me leading legislation to declare racism as a public health crisis. But the foundation was tied to infant mortality, the infant mortality crisis that we experience here, particularly in my district, where we have some of the best hospitals. I mean, first class, world class hospitals, but we also experience third world infant mortality rates. And so these things just did not make sense to me. So this has been a long-standing personal passion project of mine. So when we talk about reproductive freedom, when we talk about reproductive justice, when we talk about women being able to have the right to make their own healthcare decisions, I hail from the state where the evangelist of Trump's 2025 project is now the VP pick, JD Vance, right? And this is a person who believes in having a national abortion ban with no exceptions for rape or incest. We are the state where there was a 10-year-old child who was a rape victim who had to flee the state to get the care that she needed, because abortion care is health care. And so we're also the state where a young woman, Brittany Watts, a woman of color, had a miscarriage in her bathroom, lost a child. And because when she was in her restroom, in her bathroom, on the toilet, and the body of the fetus was stuck, she was charged with misuse of a corpse, abuse of a corpse. Those charges were eventually dropped, but that was only because people showed up in Ohio in November and in August for issue 1 both times. And this is the diabolical nature of the people that are putting forth this type of legislation. It is inhumane. It is insensitive. It is inconsiderate. It is dangerous. It is deadly in some cases. And so this is a serious component that is also in Trump's Project 2025, part of the thing that they want to institute if they get their hands on the levers of power during this 2024 election. And I think it's also important, if you'll allow me to circle back. We started talking about Project 2025, but this work, as my good sister, Representative Crockett, talked about, started long before this. There was a Project 2017 that got no attention. And what they did is they implemented nearly 60% of those policies in 2017. And we're dealing with those ramifications right now. We can talk about 2016, when we were Many folks were unsure about what they were going to do, and so many people didn't even exercise their right to vote. Alfonso and Ebony, they thought, well, one candidate who was the most qualified candidate in our nation's history by the name of Secretary Clinton was on the ballot, but her emails. And then another guy who people thought, oh, he would never win. Well, because people stayed home, because people played games in this binary system and voted third party, we ended up with a Donald Trump presidency. And he was able to appoint not one, not two, but 3 Supreme Court justices who are overturning decades of precedent. Roe v. Wade was overturned on my birthday, June 24th, 2022, worst president I ever received. So I'll never forget the day. And so these are the ramifications when we talk about that cliche, elections have consequences. This is the real life situation of elections having consequences. Because people didn't show up in 2016, those consequences didn't immediately hit us in 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 even, but we're feeling them now. June 24th, 2022, Roe v. Wade was overturned, immediately followed by the overturning of affirmative action, the overturning of the Chevron case. And these are things that are outlined. It's not just a framework, Alfonso. It is a blueprint. It is a true roadmap of how they're going to really try to end democracy as we know it in this country. I mean, we heard Donald Trump say himself, if you vote this time, you'll never have to vote again. Now, I don't know about y'all, but that is very, very concerning for me. And because I know that when it comes to power in this country, that whether you are Black, white, rich, poor, gay, straight, Democrat, Republican, everybody gets one vote. So we need to make sure that we are taking this power back and that we are using it and that we're not being selfish in that, and that we're spreading the power and empowering young people, empowering our community to make sure that they understand the power that they hold, because this election is truly going to be the most consequential of our life. These people aren't playing games. One of the things that I respect is that they are relentless about their pursuit of power. We have to vote from the top of the ticket to the bottom, because every position matters in this game called politics. If we win the presidency, but we don't have a House or a Senate to support that presidency, then we're going to be in big trouble. So we have to make sure that we are crystal clear about what's at stake and what we need to do to preserve this fragile thing called democracy. It is not a guarantee. It is a gift, but it is not a guarantee.
Church.
I was just about to say that.
I know we're not raising money, but can we pass the plate on that one a little bit?
The doors are open.
That was a word. That was a word. So I know we only have 5 more minutes or so with you both, and I think there are a few things that we want to get to. So Ebony, maybe we can just shift to D&I. So everyone's heard about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has become now a target by some who oppose it. This is a nonpartisan call, so we'll try to just focus on the facts. So for both of you, and I think I want you both to answer this question, how has the term diversity, equity, and inclusion been weaponized to fuel misinformation? And what impact does this have on genuine equity efforts that we're seeing, whether in corporate sector or in government?
Yeah, so real quick, I'll say that basically they're using DEI as their new racial slur. I mean, I'm just saying it's the new N word as far as I'm concerned. And what I need people to understand is that Chantel brought up the affirmative action decision. And part of kind of the catalyst for that has been this whole kind of anti-DEI movement that we've seen, where they are pulling money out of our institutions, whether it's the colleges or whether it's other governmental agencies. But more importantly, we got to bring it back to the economics, right? So they are trying to translate this into everything that they can. This is where we've seen the attacks on the Fearless Fund. When you have Black women trying to raise capital for Black women, and they're saying, no, you can't do that. Well, they ain't never told the white man that they couldn't do that. And that's the whole reason we've needed DEI, just to be clear. It's because there's not been space made for people other than white men in this country. And as has been pointed out recently, the facts are that white women have benefited more from affirmative action than anyone. And so what it's always supposed to be is a matter of, hey, look at me too. But as we can look at this election, and while I'm being nonpartisan in this moment, let me just point out the facts. The best way to explain how there has been a level of privilege in this country is to look and see that you got an orange man on one side who literally was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And somehow we have a race that is tied between him after his 34 felony convictions and a black woman who has never been to jail, who has been elected to multiple spots from DA to attorney general to U.S. Senator to Vice President, and she is the one that they are alleging is unqualified because she is Black and because she is woman. That is how DEI has been weaponized in this country, when essentially it would just give her an opportunity to sit at the table. And right now we have a race that is tied. So that's my summary.
So DEI, we're gonna take it back, is definitely earned it. That's what I heard somebody say. So she has definitely earned it. And
Yes.
when we come to DEI, DEI is supposed to level the playing field when all things are equal, because they want to pretend like, again, as Jasmine said, it's you're lacking qualifications, and the only reason you're getting these opportunities is because of the skin color or your gender, which nothing could be further from the truth. When it comes to our vice president, she's far more qualified than Trump and JD Vance and many of those Republicans that are questioning her qualifications combined. Okay, so if they put all of their little qualifications together, it wouldn't equal Vice President Harris's pinky finger, as far as I'm concerned. So these people are just, they're flamethrowers, they're gaslighters. Like this is something that they have been well practiced in, and they have no relationship with the truth. This is what they do. So for me, I don't want us to run away from DEI, because I am DEI. I am diversity, equity, and inclusion all day. I fight for us to make sure that we are getting those needs. I fight for us to make sure that the playing field is leveled, and that is what DEI is all about. But the fact that they are underqualified and questioning the qualifications of the most qualified person in this country's history to run for president is laughable. And I'm going to just leave it there.
Thank you both for that. And now for the final question. You are both, of course, elected to Congress. You, Congresswoman Crockett, was elected in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, and you, Congresswoman Brown, in 2021. So where this town hall is about voter registration, it's about voter mobilization. What do you want to leave people with when they are saying, I'm not going to vote, or my vote doesn't matter, or this is all noise, or I don't understand all the key issues? What do you want to leave them with on this town hall?
So I'll jump in, I guess. For me, I would just tell people my very first race that I ran was for city council. And when the polls closed, I was literally down by 6 votes. And I thought I lost that race. But for this thing called provisional ballots, which I call them just in case. So just in case you requested an absentee ballot, or just in case you moved and you didn't update your voter registration, or just in case you got married and didn't change your name, you will still get a provisional ballot and vote. But these votes aren't counted immediately. They're counted 11 days later. And in my race, there were 23 of them. And that shifted me being down from 6 votes to winning by 7. Now, as a child of faith, 7 represents perfection, completion, and God. And while I was okay with the outcome, if I had lost, I was okay with that. But I trusted God's infinite wisdom. And winning by 7 has been my moral compass, the guiding force, and really the foundation of how and what I do as it relates to this work. I got into this because I wanted to help people. And I knew that serving in a public office could help me help a lot of people at one time. I need people to know that we have a chance to make history. We are on the precipice of change in this country. And it is critical that we use this power, call the vote. Because, like I said previously, when it comes to power in this country, it doesn't matter your party affiliation. It doesn't matter whether you're Black or white. It doesn't matter your gender, from GED to PhD. Everybody gets one vote. And people don't try to take things away from you that don't have value. They know that the vote is the way that we can truly make real change in this country. So I am just humbly, respectfully, but with bold expectations, pleading with people. Do not sit these elections out, none of them. And make sure you vote in every election and every race, up and down the ticket, because this is truly a way for you to exercise your power in this country. And if we don't do it, the threat is real that they will try to take it away. And with that goes away our freedoms, many of the freedoms that we are taking for granted. The freedom for us to decide how we take care of our bodies, when we decide to start a family, who and how we choose to love. That's all on the line. So you don't have to do it for me. Do it for yourself and the future freedom, and fight for this fragile thing called democracy, because again, it is not a guarantee.
Yeah, so God bless Chantel for only being down by 6. When I was running for the state house, baby, I came up 700 votes down. So polls closed. We had been voting for 3 weeks. We had tons of early voting because it was in the middle of the pandemic. And I had hustled. When I tell y'all I hustled, y'all don't understand. Like, I've actually just started sharing this story about the fact that I went and registered people at the trap houses. I did. Okay.
You gotta meet them everywhere.
Yes. A vote is a vote is a vote. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, I knew where I wanted to go with some of my legislation, because I understand that when you end up with drug convictions, that means that you don't have opportunities for education. That means your housing opportunities go away, your job opportunities. Like, I understood what sometimes cause people to kind of be in this cycle where they feel like they can never get ahead, because I had done criminal defense work. And so I was like, listen, I'm fighting for y'all. I need y'all to fight for me to get in there to fight for y'all. So I went everywhere. So anyway, I was down by 700 votes. So I told my team, yo, we done lost. We tried, but 3 weeks later, it's 700. Somehow I ultimately won my race by 90 votes. So I tell everyone that every single vote counts. So it ended up being the tightest state house race in the entire state of Texas that year. And I went from barely getting there, one of the thank you Lotties, that made it into the state house, to then becoming only the 4th Black woman ever elected to Congress from the state of Texas in the very next term. So what I want you to understand is that there is great talent that is out there that has a heart. But listen, they can't get anywhere if y'all don't do y'all research and decide that you're going to show up. And the reality is this: would you ever own a business and pay somebody every month or every week or however frequent you're going to pay them and never check in on them, never decide to play a role in their hiring or firing? You would not. But that's essentially what you do when you give up your vote, because listen, you have to pay taxes or they come in to get you, right? Yeah. So if you're paying taxes, then why is it that you would not want to say so? And who's going to decide how your tax dollars are spent and where they're going to prioritize those dollars? Like, you should, like elected officials run everything in your life, everything, whether it is the police that are on your streets, whether we're talking about whether or not you got good streets, whether you're talking about SNAP benefits, which both Chantel and I serve on the same 2 committees, oversight as well as agriculture, where right now we are fighting. It's never a sexy headline to put out there, but we don't have a farm bill because there are people on the other side of us that have decided, you know what, $6 a day for people to eat is just too much. We want to cut $30 billion when people are already struggling. Like, you should know this stuff, and you have access to this information because y'all got the internet. When we had the likes of a John Lewis that literally did not know if he was going to live or not, guess what? He didn't have access to that information. So I'm just imploring y'all to say, this ain't about Chantel. It ain't about Jasmine. And frankly, it's not about Kamala Harris. I need y'all to be selfish and say, this is about me and mine. And so what that demands of me is that I'm going to show up and make a decision about which direction my life is going to go in, whether I'm going back or whether I'm going forward. And I'm telling y'all right now, I'm trying to go forward. So that's it.
Okay. So we have 2 sermons. Ebony? Do you have any last words?
Give me 3 seconds. I just really want to end. First, let me just say thank you. Thank you, ladies. Thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you for the ground that you are laying. I just want to end by just even quoting Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, who said that voting is not just our right, it is our power. And people need to realize that.
It really is.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Congresswoman Crockett, Congresswoman Brown. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your advocacy on issues that directly impact Black and Brown people. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And now, before we go to our next set of guests, I want to give a special shout out to the one and only D Nice for starting this town hall off with a bang. You all know him from Club Quarantine, and he showed out again tonight. D Nice, thank you for all of your support. Every single time we ask you, you show up, and I want to just say thank you to all of the work that you do and continue all of the support you continue to give us. And now we turn to a specific demographic group, young voters. Every election, we hear that young people have such an impact in national, state, and local races, and this year promises to be no different. We are joined tonight by 2 leaders running brands that speak specifically to young people. Rochelle Dennis is the head of Girls United, which is a global destination for young multicultural individuals to find the community, mentors, perspectives, tools, resources, and opportunity to thrive. We're also joined by Sophia Dennis, who is a Gen Z voting rights advocate and an entrepreneur.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. As Alfonso has mentioned, we will really be getting into the topic of how young voters can really mobilize in this election to really speak to issues. So without further ado, I would like to introduce everybody to a very special guest that we have. And that will be Lene Vani. How are you?
Hey, everybody. How's it going? It's been a long day, but I'm good.
A long day it has been, but we're excited to have you here and excited to, really get into it. So with that being said, just wanted to really just understand, like, you being from Spelman and going to Spelman and also, Boston University, what has it been like being in, the field that you're in and really mobilizing young voters to vote?
I think I got my first degree in psychology from Spelman College, and there you learn that kids have the opportunity, or young people have the opportunity, to glean a lot from the environment around them, and they're really perceptible and absorb things like a sponge. And so it has not been difficult communicating with young people. I think 2020 brought us a lot of heartache, but it also brought us a catalyst for people to really be engaged and interested in the discourse surrounding Black people's rights and opportunity in the way we engage politically. So the ground has been set, and this election season is no different. There is air that keeps fanning the flames of young people getting ignited, wanting to be out there and wanting to be involved. So it's been very interesting to see a lot of young people take the lead. A lot of young people have voices larger than mine. I think I get coined as like a voice that can speak directly to Gen Z. I'm a millennial, so I just try my best to make things as like down to earth as I possibly can to bring everybody to the table. But young people are really out here radicalized in a way that I never expected to see. And I kind of bring up this example quite often. When I was a high school teacher, my kids used to ask me, did I ever think there could be another civil rights movement? And I would tell them no. I would tell them that I think that as a community, we are too individualized, we are too siloed and separated to understand one another's needs enough to come to the table. but I never expected to see anything like what I'm seeing right now. So my hat goes off to young people, and I'm just grateful to be in community with young people and learning from them as well in this work, because I have degrees in psychology and African American studies. And if you had asked me when I started this in 2020, I would not have assumed I'd be anywhere near politics. But that's kind of the last thing I'll say to answer this question. It is my love for Black history and my deep study of it that revealed to me that Black history does not exist without Black political action. Every single thing that we've done, from the agency of enslaved people to outright televised revolutions and movements, have all been political acts. So yeah, it only makes sense that we're here.
That's wonderful. So I think based on the previous conversation, which was incredibly insightful, we can really think about voting not only as a part of civic engagement, but also almost as though it is a civic duty, also a right that was fought for by so many of the people that came before us. So when we're discussing Gen Z and the importance of the youth in the Gen Z vote, what are some of the things that you've learned about how Gen Z engages politically and how we've been able to encourage certain people who have had questions about interacting politically, how to become politically active, how to find their political identity, and to just really forge their path as a political person looking to engage?
Yeah, so the internet, point blank and simple, and apps, and social media apps is really how young people are engaging. Interestingly enough, when we found out that Joe Biden would be stepping down and Kamala Harris would be taking the endorsement, or was getting the endorsement rather, that week I saw so many young people, and interestingly enough as well, young white people hosting lives incessantly. I get on TikTok maybe once or twice a day, but throughout the week I would see the same young people creators on live doing a lot of the work to sort of argue folks down. So young people are arming themselves with information to be able to come into public spaces where a lot of rhetoric is spewed to share the facts. I think young people are really interested in engaging in this combat against mis and disinformation in a real way. So I'm really interested to see the way that this morphs and flows. But what I'm also seeing is a lot of organizations wanting to provide resources to meet that enthusiasm of young people. So I've been blessed to engage with this organization called Fair Fight and consulting on how they should be connecting with communities on social media. And they're providing a lot of resources, not just to myself, but just to the general public. And they enlighten me on quite a few ways people can get involved with voting. And I think they're really important. And again, I think we have such enthusiasm. I keep using that word because we just haven't had motivation like this in a long time. Like people from your grandmas, your aunties, down to the very young people wanting to have a voice, and how we are wanting to have a voice, and how we are voicing our concerns for this election. So I wanted to just kind of go through a couple of what those things were. I think when people think about volunteering around election, they think about going door to door to knock and get people to register to vote. You can absolutely do that, but something that was completely new to me was the whole idea of voter protection opportunities and volunteer roles. And so you have things like poll watchers, and these are people who are making sure that processes are being done as they need to be done, that there's no funny business. And after the last election that we need people in those rooms to be doing those things. And you can be partisan or nonpartisan. It does not matter your affiliation. And really for all of these, it doesn't matter your affiliation. It just gives you an opportunity to be in the room. Before I go down the rest of the list, I just think that's the most important thing for us to consider here. The online space is a great space for discourse. We need to be in rooms where people making decisions can hear those voices and feel that sort of tension, feel that sort of pressure in ways. I'm a huge advocate. I won't say too much, but I don't want to see us give any more of our bodies or our blood. We can vote. We can use the power of our vote to make moves and make waves, and we've yet to use the full extent of our vote. So I need us in the rooms to actually apply that sort of pressure in legal ways. And there are so many legal ways to apply that pressure that we've not gotten into because we are angry. And there's nothing wrong with us being angry. But what I see is an amazing opportunity. A congresswoman in the last segment said that we are in a historical moment, and it's not just because we have the potential to elect the first Black woman president. It's because we as a nation have created or engaged in this nexus event to literally take the social contract theory back. And I know I'm supposed to be going down the list, but I'm on a roll here.
You're definitely, getting into it. And what you've really talked about has been social media, right?
Yeah.
And really utilizing that to our advantage so that we're not putting our bodies on the line anymore.
Right.
Can you give a little bit of context into how, your series Parking Lot Pimpin' really came about, and how that has been a response, or has been, spread across social media to really, inform people?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I saw a desire and a need for the content and people actually wanting to hear more. When I was that high school teacher, I would teach upperclassmen, 11th and 12th graders. And so I had kids come into my classroom every semester just thinking they were going to take a freebie class because they thought they knew everything there was to possibly know about Black history because they've been taught the same things over and over and over again through their 12 years of education. And so in this moment where we're also getting the opportunity to legitimize and formalize African-American history in schools, we're also seeing that being attacked. So anyway, back to why I started, I actually went on a Juneteenth march with some organizations in my community. And that moment that I thought that I would never see, that I was telling my kids, I don't think it's possible. I felt downtown Atlanta marching to the Capitol, and not just my organization was out that day, but so many hundreds of thousands of people were coating the streets and having an amazing time. And so many different people of so many different colors. And you had folks with signs talking about or referencing cultural connection points and movements for freedom and organizations between Black and Latinos, Black and Asians, Black and white folk. Had people making sandwiches. This was COVID times. So you had people with medic packs and masks and people wearing gloves and being mindful. And so anyway, I went and sat in my parking lot because I felt like everything I prepared myself for, all the Black History Bs and going to get that MA that nobody told me I was going to be able to use outside of being a professor. I wanted to share that with the world in a way that was fun, in a way that met that sort of desire with something that didn't feel like it was stuffing it down their throat. And it wasn't just me. I actually remember when I was getting started figuring out how I wanted to do mine, I was inspired by people like Consciously. I would see folks like, I ain't gonna name a bunch of names, but I saw a bunch of creators on the internet, and whether I fully agreed with their perspectives or their approaches or not, I found space for myself in that and connected directly with the community that was looking to hear those things. So that's how I got started, and that's how it stuck. The people wanted it and they wanted to share it.
That's amazing. So I think you've discussed how you've been able to build up quite a bit of a social media following and to get young people engaged in the content that you produce and to really be able to create a message behind the content that you've produced. You were going through a list of different ways that people can become involved in the political process that are just not the typical way that you would think about it. So earlier this week, I watched a video of yours where you were discussing this, where you were talking about ways that people can become involved in the political process. And I'm going to let you go down that list, but I did just want to call out that this is something that can be super useful to people who may not be able to vote. Whether that be for whatever reason that is, maybe you're not old enough to vote yet, maybe you have some sort of other reason that you're not able to vote, but just letting you know that there are so many ways for people to be involved in the political process, even if you are not able to vote in this election. So whether you're not 18 yet and you really want to be involved in the political process because you will become an adult under this political term, or you're not a citizen, whatever the case may be, what Lene is about to describe are different ways that you can become involved in this process. And for the people who are voting, these are ways that you can become even more involved and learn a lot more about the political process. So yeah, I would love for you to continue to discuss some of the ways that people can become more involved.
Okay, great. So we already went over a poll watcher, and I told you these are people who are making sure the process of voting, from the folks who are tasked with, taking your identification and giving you your ballot and all the things. They're making sure all of these things are done by the book, that there's no funny business happening. You also have poll observers, who are folks who are making sure people who are engaging in the voting process, how close they are to one another, making sure that they are doing what they are supposed to do as far as protecting the privacy of every voter. You got hotline volunteers, and these people are really important for community, especially because all of us have so many questions around voting. So hotline volunteers are based are based and provided for community to be able to call in and ask questions about where their precinct is, the hours you have to vote, the earliest that you can vote, maybe some rules around what you can and cannot bring to the voting precinct, and just some things that you should be aware of. Story collection, which I think a lot of young people would be interested in. Story collection just involves talking to people about their experience with voting. And I want to be clear that nothing that anyone on this entire call today is offering, that nothing we're offering you is perfect. Nothing we're offering you is scot-free or the epitome of democracy. We're here fighting for it. We're here fighting for the opportunity to make it something all of us feel good about engaging in. So story collection allows for us to record critiques. It allows us to see what community wants from the voting process. And I feel like a lot of folks, young people with their phones in their hands, we could do this anyway. It would be an amazing thing to see us trading stories like this. But it's important to be connected to community organizations that have networks and are platforming those networks to make that information accessible to people who do not have social media. And I know you think that everybody has it, but everybody doesn't. And this information is so important for people who need to get it or access it off of the phones or off of the timeline. Maybe their algorithm just might not show them something that is super important for their ears to hear. So story collection, I think, is a very beautiful way to volunteer, and I think directly connects with younger audiences and how they want to be engaged. But here are two things that I think we need to engage in droves. As I said on my video last week, whenever I did it, Board of Election volunteers and state election board volunteers. In order to volunteer, what your job description would be is to go attend these meetings. You can see what their agendas are online the night before. You can, and I'm reading to make sure that I'm not saying anything incorrectly, but you can basically register to make public comment and go into these rooms and discuss the benefits of certain goings on for certain voters and then the cons of certain goings on for voters. And what I mean by that is these board of elections are the people who get to make decisions about they can't drink water in line. They can't do this, that, and the other. They can't sit in a chair. So a lot of these things are also a lot of this is voter suppression under the covert nature of policy, the covert umbrella of policy. And by going to these meetings, you can suss out exactly what's being done and try to circumvent your community from having an active voice in voting. And you can take it back home. You can take it back to your neighborhoods. You can take it to the trap houses, like Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was just talking about. I've been seeing this amazing Pastor Reproductive Bryan here in Atlanta, going and talking to people who look exactly like him. And granted, he's a pastor, so he's ministering, but he's doing the type of work that I need to see all of us doing. And that's engaging people you don't think would engage, because every single vote counts. So by going to these meetings, you get all the tools that you need. You can also share this, like I said, with the organizations that have platform like Fair Fight to be able to make this information widely accessible to folks. But these are some of the biggest rooms to be in. So I definitely suggest Board of Election volunteering and state election board volunteering and being what's called a pro-voter voice. And then the last thing is a poll worker. These are the people who actually sign up to staff the polls. But yeah, a lot. I just went through the list: Fair Fight, Action, and I'm sorry, Fair Fight as well as Let's Freaking Go Volunteer has all this information on their site, and you can assign it by state. So yeah, for sure. But as an Atlantan who knows what it's like for my voting rights to be decided upon behind closed doors. Yeah. Scared, shaking, not really trying to engage. I'm so excited to learn about opportunities like this, because it lets me know that I don't just have to sit with my hands, sitting on my hands. And that's one of the biggest, most important things. If you do not vote, I understand, again, none of this is perfect. None of these, in a nonpartisan way of speaking, none of these candidates are exactly perfectly what we want, what everyone wants. You cannot make everybody happy. Yeah. But if we do not vote, we cannot be engaged. And I'm not just asking you to vote for primary. I'm asking you to vote down ballot. So again, we can get the House, we can get the Senate. I'm also asking you to vote in your local elections, down to the sheriff, down to the councilwoman and all the things. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's an important habit to pick up. If you start voting at a young age, you tend to continue to vote as you get older. So it's good to start voting as soon as you can so that you can continue to stay civically engaged.
Amen.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of issues at stake, and some of the issues that, we're seeing Gen Z really, really take up and really coming to the polls concerned about is, cost of living, gun reform, job wages, racism, and student debt. All reflective of these past couple of years, that we've had. And it just shows how much is really at stake, especially, with the attacks on DEI, on affirmative action. And times are really scary. People are, what we're really categorizing this election as is an attack on democracy. And so, Gen Z, this is what the future looks like for us. So there's a lot of concern there. There's not an understanding of what that future will look like. And, the fact that we have an active role to play in making sure that we are ensuring our future is important. So, everything that you've mapped out is super important. So, what are ways that, like, even people that can't vote, right? People that are, not eligible to vote, what can they do? What can they, what can they also bring to the table as well?
I think, so a lot of things that I just mentioned, you can engage in whether you can register to vote or not. And I think it's important that you still do that. I think it's important that you still remain in the conversation. And one of the biggest gaps that I'm seeing is the chasm between the rhetoric that is being spewed within community online and what we do when we go to the polls. So even if you can't vote, something that I'm encouraging a lot of people to do is recognize that a lot of rhetoric that we are falling victim to and vulnerable to that is anti-community is actually preventing us from moving forward in a strategic and unified way. I'm doing my best to develop opportunity and programming to go into community and have these conversations, like focus groups with Black men, women, queer folk, theys, them, young, old, to talk about what we need to see from one another to feel protected. And I feel like that is like step one. That's step one. And we're trying to do both at the same time because unfortunately we're in a game of catch up. But if you cannot vote, and for whatever reason you cannot vote, and I'm specifically thinking about maybe offenders who have had their right to vote taken away, being in community with people who are actively engaged in voting helps them to continue to remember to think of you. We're only going to move forward if we're in community. And so, yes, it is on us to make sure that we are aware of our community's needs, but we have to sit at the table together in order for everyone's needs to be on the whiteboard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having the conversations, building community, being aware of what other community members are in need of, what their concerns may be, how, things that Rochelle just listed out may impact them differently, and how, all of us can exercise our vote to be as beneficial as possible, is I think all we can do and all we can hope for. We are so happy that we were able to have you, Lene. Anything else that you would like to share with the audience?
It sounds cliche, and I feel like unfortunately we've said a lot of these things without the sort of organization and activation necessary to really see them through, to make them real. But you cannot have a voice if you do not vote. You simply cannot. I hate to say it. I hope it don't sound ridiculous. I wish there was more that you could, there is more that you can do. And we've sort of named so many things surrounding voting, but that is the key to, as I said earlier, us taking the social contract theory back. Our government was designed to protect the people. And in return, the people were supposed to empower the government. And we've seen over and over again in countless time, whether it's in our states or whether in this country, nationally, we have asked for things from our government that we have not received. We have been ignored blatantly. And so we have to engage even further to push back.
Yeah. Yep. And what a great way to end, everything that you're saying. Like we've got to get to the polls and do what we need to do. I do want to encourage the audience also to submit their questions, and we will be answering them very shortly. Lene, thank you so much for being on with us. This has been absolutely amazing, and we're really excited to see the youth really get to the polls and vote. So thank you for everything that you're doing. And we will toss it back to our host, Alfonso.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, Lene. We know that many people are joining us on many different channels and platforms, from YouTube to X to StreamYard. So for folks who may have joined us late, you just heard from Lene Beni, who is a poet, an artist, a voting rights advocate, and a social media guru, and is really known for her IG series, Parking Lot Pimpin'. Lene, thank you so much for joining us and all of the work that you do. Rochelle and Sophia, thank you for moderating this important conversation. I will now turn it over to my co-host, Ebony.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you, ladies, for such an empowering session. I want to say this because many times when we have this conversation, and I want people to understand that literally sometimes while you are sleeping, there's legislation being passed about you and your community. Even today, the Georgia Secretary of State made the decision to provide individual citizens with the ability to cancel any other individual's voter registration digitally. This is a threat to democracy, to voter participation. These things are happening in real time. 13 states where governors are opting out of food programs for kids. I'm not telling you who to vote for, but I'm telling you that you need to vote. I'm so excited for our next panel discussion. Two brilliant Black men. Every election cycle, we hear about Black men and voting. There are stories about voting patterns and trends that are often misaligned with reality. Check your sources, people. We have two commentators who are on the front lines of election work and voting to discuss that further with us today. First, Bakari Sellers, who is a political commentator on CNN. You see him all the time. Former member of the South Carolina House of Representatives and the author of The Moment. He's joined by Van Lathan, who is the co-host of the Ringer's Higher Learning podcast and is best known as a former co-host and senior producer on TMZ Live, which I always say he's always ready to check somebody in real time. He is also the executive producer for Two Distant Strangers, the 2021 Academy Award winner for Best Live Action Short Film. Please welcome these gentlemen.
What's up, man?
What's up, brother? How you doing, man? How are you feeling out there right now?
Well, I'm on vacation and y'all got me doing this. So I was trying to spend a little time with the family, but things kind of went different a couple Sundays ago. But I'm happy to be here anytime that Essence calls, anytime that I get a chance, an opportunity to spend some time. And they told me who was moderating it, so I couldn't say no. I mean, they said Rachel Lindsay was busy, and so here we are.
She always is. Let me ask you this. The narrative around Black men, our votes, our apathy to vote, our willingness to vote for the other side, how accurate do you feel that to be, as it seems to come back every single election cycle?
No, it's false. I mean, it's objectively false because the second largest voting group for the Democratic Party in this country behind Black women have been Black men. And when you look at the statistics, you'll see that Black men actually turn out of a disproportionate share of the electorate compared to their peers. And so that's objectively false. And I've said this to you. You've heard our good friend Charlamagne talk about it. You've heard many other people talk about it and kind of steal my line, but I love it. But the simple truth is that this election has always been between, at the time it was Biden, Trump, and the couch, but now it's Harris, Trump, and the couch. And still to this day, I mean, Kamala Harris's biggest threat is not Donald Trump. Kamala Harris's biggest threat is the couch. And, people electing to stay at home. I think that's going to change now with the energy that you see, but that still is nonetheless a threat.
In the excitement for Kamala Harris since she's been announced as the top of the ticket, have you seen and felt a noticeable shift? And I guess the question is, why? Why do you think that shift has been so distinct, if you've seen one, when she essentially represents the same administration and the same record of that administration that's been turning America around for the last 4 years, 3.5 years? Why do you think so many people are into Kamala at the top of the ticket right now?
It's a simple fact that a lot of people don't know, but I'm gonna spring this on you because I just found out about it. In 2016 and 2020, there were a total of 93 million different individuals, 93 million different human beings that cast a vote against Donald Trump. A lot of that energy was pent up. A lot of that want for change is pent up. And let's be honest, it's a fresher face on the scene. It's somebody new. It's, she ran in a primary and did not do well. But primaries are for people who are tuned in. Usually you have 14 million people decide who is a nominee for a particular candidate. At the end of the day, 160 million people vote for president of the United States. And so it's a very less than 10% of the electorate chooses a particular party's nominee. And so what we're looking at now is just this pent up want to participate. You're also seeing something that's amazing, Van. In 2016, in September 2016, Hillary Clinton raised $150 million. Kamala Harris raised $200 million in 8 days. Something is happening in the world, and we should see if that's going to be enough to change the trajectory of where we end up.
I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which I have to say every single moment of every single day, remind people that my city exists. And I was talking to some people from the NAACP a couple of days ago, and they were telling me about voter turnout down there in Baton Rouge, and they said the numbers were around 17%. Now, when you say the number, I was blown away. But intellectually, if you'd had asked me, I probably could have conjectured that the number was somewhere near that. In a city like Baton Rouge, that's around 54% Black, population-wise, what is it about civic engagement that we haven't learned? Why is it that it seems like sometimes in a place like that, where the power really, really, really can be taken, that we're not mobilizing to get out there and vote and take that power for ourselves?
That's a good question. It's probably one I would prefer to hear you and Gary Chambers have a one-on-one dialogue and Ted James and try to figure that out. My conjecture or hypothesis would be that over the past decades, Louisiana has made it more difficult for people of color and for people to vote. Also, the caliber of candidates that are running for office in terms of meeting voters where they are and giving them something to vote for instead of something to vote against has been, a unique problem and leaves something to be desired. I would probably say, last but not least, there is a palpable sense of exhaustion felt by Black people from Baton Rouge to South Carolina, where I'm from, to LA, where you rich folk, I think you probably lay your head out there in LA a little bit more. I'm young, how you say you from Baton Rouge, but you take pictures under the Hollywood sign. And anyway, I digress. But I would say that there is a certain level of exhaustion amongst Black folk throughout. So I think it's the combination of the three things: the obstacles, the lack of quality candidates, and also that level of exhaustion.
I asked a question specifically about my hometown, but I meant it in a broader way, and you answered with some observations about the pitfalls or the challenges to voting for Black people that I think would probably those challenges will probably exist. They probably exist throughout communities all over the country. How do we turn people out? How do we get people to exercise such an important American right and power and privilege to change their lives, to vote for DAs, to vote for sheriffs, to vote for comptrollers, to vote for people who have direct power over aspects of their life? How do we get people back engaged?
I think it's very simple. I think you have to give people a reason to do it. And the reason it's not enough to say people died and fought for it, because it's kind of like how we spent 6, 7, 8 months talking about a threat to democracy. It's just not breaking through, right, folks? It's just, sometimes you have to shift messengers too. And so my first point would be, that we have to give people something to vote for. One of the things that's unique about KDH is that she is going to areas of the country, meeting voters where they are, and not dealing in who Donald Trump is, but she's actually articulating a plan and laying out a plan of why you should vote for her. And that's just unique in this time frame, because we always want to paint our opponent as something other than a child of God, and we want to bring him down to a certain level and knock her down to a certain level, instead of actually dealing with what you can provide to constituency for which you're running. So that's first. The second thing is we have to meet voters where they are. And I've said that once, and I'll probably repeat it 2 or 3 more times. Black folk who reach or attain a certain level of accolade, people who reach a certain level of wealth, a lot of my friends on the left forget that you don't, it's not fair to assume people should come to you to hear your message. Sometimes it's necessary for you to shut up and go to them and listen to their hope.
Got a couple of questions coming in. One question was, can you vote by email?
No.
Is that possible? No.
No, and thank God it's not. That's one of the more unsafe manners in which you probably could vote by email, but you can vote by mail, not email, but mail. Particularly in Pennsylvania. Anybody on the call that's from Pennsylvania, please go out and do everything you can do to show up and vote. And you can vote early. You can vote at your local office. For those of us who be traveling on election day, it's important that we go out and do the things necessary. Check in with your local voter registration office and figure out how you can vote.
Let me ask you this. Every single election, particularly at the top of the ticket, people ask us, people say to us that this is the most important election of our lifetimes.
Yeah.
It's been repeated so many different times that it's kind of lost its luster. Is this the most important election of our lifetimes right now? And if so, why?
That's a really, really good question, man. And the answer is yes. And the problem is that I probably echoed that before. And yeah, the answer is yes. There is a distinct difference between the future under Kamala Harris and the future under Donald Trump. There is a distinct difference between Project 2025 and, making sure that women can decide what they want to do with their body, making that decision with their family and their doctor. In Project 2025, they actually talk about eliminating the school lunch program. They talk about eliminating veterans benefits.
Literally starving children.
Yeah, they talk about a nationwide ban on abortion, ending no-fault divorce, because they believe women should stay in relationships regardless, and not only just stay in relationships, but stay in the kitchen. And so and now you have an effective messenger on what the future looks like. And so, as I told the vice president, if she's acknowledged and is actually executing, because of course it just makes perfect sense. You don't have to lean into the identity of who you are. People can see it. You don't have to lean into the identity of being the first. People can see it. But you can talk to those folks who don't key in every single day of the week like we do, the social media or the news. And you need to be able to tell them things like, I'm not going to raise taxes on people who make under $400,000. I'm going to lower costs by going after price gougers. I'm going to sign the toughest immigration bill that Donald Trump stifled and made stop. All of those things matter, and those are the things that she's articulated.
I want to talk about the actual peril of the election, meaning how important is the turnout for people to get out there and vote, based upon the fact that this vote will be heavily contested if, in fact, Donald Trump loses. Like, how important is it for people to get to the polls? Because if Donald Trump himself doesn't win, he is going to claim all kinds of witchcraft and chicanery and things like that.
No, you're right. And I would argue that those things will take care of themselves. I want everybody not to worry about what happens when you round third. Let's get on first base first. I would encourage people just to show up and show out, or in the words of the great American poet Kendrick Lamar, pop out, vote. Yeah, those things, that's more necessary than worrying, because he lost every single challenge he had last time. So I'm quite confident in that system.
Last question for you, because I know you out there with Forrest Gump and y'all got to go catch some shrimp.
Well, you ain't
Um,
seen my boat. Hold on, if I can I don't know how
show me
to.
the boat.
I don't know how you can turn it around, but I'm sitting next to the boat.
This is your boat right here?
Man, no, I'm not. I just got done paying student loans. But I'm outside the seafood restaurant, because we down here in South Carolina where they go catch it for you right here on the side. So this is the boat they
That's
go
what I'm
catch.
talking about.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you this question until I see the answer change. And, you know, we talk about Charlemagne. I ask Charlemagne this every time we see you on TV. We sit around and we have a conversation about how much you get on our nerves. When will Bakari Sellers' name be on a ballot again? Or have you found a different way to reach people and affect change that you don't feel like your name has to be on the ballot?
I think both of those answers are true. And I'll be 100% honest with you. I feel like I'm in a group chat with you. We just chatting, but you know, if Jim Clyburn were to resign today, I would likely run for his seat in Congress, and I think I would be decently successful. But the longer that takes, the less likely I am to run, because I enjoy where I am on a platform that is decent, and you have the relationships that, you know, other United States congressmen may or may not have. And you know, Van, I'll ask you this: what job do you choose where you consciously go work with people you dislike? Like, why do I want to go work with Matt Gates along like, I don't know why. And then why would I take a pay cut to go work with them, right?
Right.
But I don't know. I want to be a part of the change I want to see in the world, and so I'll never say never. And I am really, really in tune to family and letting God order my steps, because at the end of the day, I've been in some bad spots, and I've been in some weird predicaments, and I've been left when I should have been right. And I've been upside down, and I should have been straight up. But he gets me through and through. And so I'm just going to listen to him, and hopefully the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart will be acceptable in his sight.
Good answer. Well, my brother, it is always good to talk to you, particularly about something that is so important. And you guys, there's nothing more important than exercising your power as an American, getting out there and voting. Thank you to Essence for providing this platform for us to have this conversation here in the Paint the Polls Black Town Hall. Thank you to Bakari. Brother, we really appreciate you joining us while you're out there running from the police with your beard and everything. You look like you're on the lam. I'm just gonna be honest with you.
I am channeling my inner young Teddy Pendergrass.
Right. We appreciate you joining us, man. Thank you, Bakari. We hope that this inspires everybody to get out there and vote, because once again, it is the most important election of your lifetime, and you're going to be framing and creating your very near and distant future with your vote. So we hope that you guys will get out there and do that. I'm Van Lathan. Thank you to Essence.
Van Lathan, thank you so much for moderating that conversation. Bakari, thank you for joining us on vacation. Thank you for all of your advocacy. And now, as we come to a close, we're going to answer some questions of some key areas or issues that we have heard about. We're going to be joined again by Emily McMorris and Sophia Dennis and Rochelle Dennis. So let's talk about the first issue that I think many people are confused about, and it's identification. I'm registered to vote, and I'm going to go out and vote in November. Do I have to take my photo ID with me? What do we think the answer is? And this will be a multiple choice. Yes, you have to take your ID with you. No, you don't have to take your ID with you. And C, it depends.
We're asking us?
Yes.
I would say yes, because I feel like you need to have some sort of government documentation.
Any person disagree? Do you have to take an ID with you when you are going to vote? Ooh, timid group. So it's a trick question. It depends.
Right, about to say it depends on where you
State to
are.
state.
I know in Maryland, I don't need my driver's ID. I have my state registration, and when I come in, they just ask me my name. They ask me where, and they ask me my address. But we are, I will say, quickly seeing across states. Many states have been enacting so many different voter registration laws that are changing, and people are going to go to their precincts and not know what to do, or even if that precinct is even still there, because they are constantly moving the goalpost on these things. So it depends on the state that you are in.
And so for many people who say, well, then that's even more confusing, what do I do? Go to vote.gov. There are many other websites that you can go to that you can check your local laws, and it will tell you whether you need to show up with a photo ID or driver's license or passport, and if so, under what circumstances. Now, second question is, okay, I don't have to show up with my ID in certain states, but I see that they're asking for ID, but only of certain people. What do you do then? What do we think the answer is? I go to vote. I know in my state, I don't need to show up with a driver's license or a passport, but I see that the Black woman, they asked her for her ID, and the Black man, they asked him for his ID. What do I do?
So
Probably
this is not. Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I think this may tie back to what Lene was discussing earlier about having different people who are stationed at polling locations to basically police and just ensure that everybody is being treated equally and fairly. And those people being stationed there would be able to report that people are being treated unfairly and that certain people are being basically being given the runaround and being told different information and being given hurdles to jump through while trying to vote.
And I would say go to a poll watcher. So that's why this is important. Two things, not just go to a poll watcher, because you, depending where you are, it may work a little differently. but I also, and I know, Alfonso, you've talked about this, I would encourage everybody to also have a number on you that you can call and report. The DOJ has a number, and I believe you said a group before, Alfonso, but there are numbers that you can call to report them immediately. I see some of the comments coming in. You need to report it immediately. I would also say, before you get to that precinct, before you know your rights. We always talk about knowing your rights in criminal justice. Know your voting rights. Also know if your name has been removed from the poll. Because what Georgia is trying to enact and allowing everyday citizens to question whether or not their neighbor is able to vote or not and get your name removed is huge.
Indeed, indeed. And so for folks, all of those are correct. If you see conduct at a voting booth where Black people are being asked to do one thing, but white people aren't being asked to do the same thing, there are a number of things you can do, including talking to a poll station watcher. But you can also call election protection watchers. So the Global Black Economic Forum, in essence, we have a partnership with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under the Law. And that partnership means that when you go into a voting booth or you go to a polling station and you see conduct that doesn't look right, you can call several numbers. There are voter helplines. One is 866-OUR-VOTE. Easy to remember, 1-866-OUR-VOTE. And you can call if you are the target of voter suppression or if you see others that are being targeted, and they can provide support as well.
Voter intimidation was such a huge, I really want people to understand that we've seen, even as a reporter, we've covered stories. They have had rallying calls for people in many southern states to stand outside in places, especially where you're allowed to carry your weapons and practice voter intimidation. I mean, literally just standing there and being a presence, scaring people to not come to the poll, to not come out to the poll. So this is real, but it is because the threat wouldn't be so real if they didn't understand the power that you have.
Yes. So let's shift to another common question that we hear, which is if anyone has an interaction with the criminal justice system, right? If you've had any type of interaction with the criminal justice system, the question is, can you still vote? Yes or no?
So
it depends.
are we talking about felonies? In some states, allow for if you are a former felon, let me say that, with and have a record, you served your time, you are able to vote. That is not at every state. That's what we're saying. No, if you can or not before you go. Some states do allow that. And here's the thing. Another reason why it's important to vote, because that may be a referendum. So when we're talking about that down ballot, these are measures that you're also voting for in your area. I know we talked about the president, but you need to see what referendums are going to be on that ballot, because we've seen many states coming out and pushing to allow, if I've done my time, why am I not able to? These are tactics that people use to keep people from voting, and you got to know that they are targeted.
Correct. And to put a finer point on that for those, it falls into several different categories, right? So there are certain states where your voting rights are retained even while you're in prison for a felony conviction. There are very few: Maine, Vermont, and DC. And then there are other states where voting rights are restored automatically after you get out of prison. So right after you get out of prison, your voting rights are restored. That's, California and Rhode Island and Pennsylvania and a few other states. And then there are states where your voting rights are restored automatically after you complete a sentence, including prison and probably parole and probation. That's, to Ebony's point, Georgia is one of those states, or West Virginia. And then you have those states where they are trying to take away your right to vote just because you've had some interaction with the criminal justice system. So once again, make sure you check your local laws to understand what your rights are. And all of these resources are publicly available. That's a question we often hear. And I think we have one more question, which is certification, right? Certification of votes. So after you vote, will your votes, will the election that you're voting in be certified? And the answer is yes. That's what it's the Department of State in every single state is responsible for certifying the election. And so that is their role. So after you vote, they're supposed to count those votes along with a number of other agencies that are involved, and then certify those votes through the electoral process. I'm sure there may be many, many other questions, but Ebony, did you have?
I was going to say on that certification, we can't forget what happened in Georgia. We can't forget that infamous call where somebody called and said, "I need 11,870 votes. Can you get it for me?" That's why it's can't forget that call. And we cannot forget what it's so important, why it is important to have civic engagement, because when we talk about the president and everything else, it is also important for us to begin to look at other roles we can fill when it comes to voting, to become an elector, whether or poll watcher or something. We must all really become more civic engaged, because it's not like we can't have that call again.
Exactly right.
Somebody may go through with the call to find those 11,870 votes. But Georgia gave us Senator Raphael Warnock, John Ossoff, and then them's got the House. That's how important that was. And that was the precursor for what kicked off January 6th.
And this is why we are doing this town hall. This is the first of many engagements that we will be taking a part in for Paint the Polls Black. This is an important election, as you've heard during this entire town hall, and we thank all of you for joining us. Closing comments, I'll start with Rochelle, and then we'll go to Sophia and Ebony.
Yeah. So just to really close out, we've already talked about the importance of mobilizing young voters to get out and vote. The power is really within us to really set what we want our future to look like. Everything is being impacted from, where we go to school to our jobs. And really, we have an active role in securing our future. And as we do more of these, it is really important to also encourage your friends to vote, the people around you to vote, because if we're not voting, we don't have a voice. So make sure that you're encouraging everybody in your life to get out and vote. Doesn't matter how young you are, you have a voice. And that's what I want to leave everybody with.
Sophia?
Yes, absolutely. As we sit here today and discuss the political process, getting involved in the political process, especially for young people who may be first-time voters, discovering their political identity, it is incredibly important for us to remember that voter apathy is not the solution, will never be the solution. And anytime you are faced with that, you must continue to encourage people to go out and vote and to encourage people to find faith in the democratic process. While it's really important for us to encourage people to vote, it's also really important for us to give others the tools and the information and the infrastructure to get other people active, to encourage others, to interact with others on a political level. So while we're having these conversations about getting people out there to vote, it's also really important for us to also give people the tools to also inform others, to have political conversations, to create these communities where they can engage with one another, where they can register to vote with their friends, where they can go out and vote with their friends, and to really engage in politics in a fun and interesting way. So go register to vote, become politically active, have these conversations with your friends, and yeah, that's my message.
Ebony.
Really quickly, I just want to say this. I spoke with a number of civil rights organizations, and they said the biggest thing that they fear this time is misinformation and disinformation. So I encourage people that as they are talking around the kitchen table with their friends and families, that they are sourcing the information that they get, that they are repeating what is facts, but may not always be popular. I want to thank you, Alfonso, for allowing me to even be here on today. I appreciate it as a member of the Black press and one of the very few members of Black owned and operated stations that's in that White House briefing room. I'm telling you that there is so much more at stake than we know. And as said before, this is not just about Trump or Harris. This is generational. Your votes are generational. This is about the courts. This is about kitchen table issues that you talk about all the time and how it's going to affect your life. So I just want everyone to leave here and remember that your vote is your power. Don't give up your power.
Thank you. Thank you, Ebony. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. Thank you to all the speakers who also joined us this evening. We hope that you have more information. We hope that you are registered to vote. And if you're not, we hope that you do get registered to vote. As you've heard throughout this town hall, our right to vote is sacred. And if we don't exercise it, someone else will. And their vote will decide the trajectory of our lives. So we hope this serves as a meaningful resource to you. I want to thank the Sundial group of companies, which includes Essence and the Global Black Economic Forum and Girls United and Afropunk and Refinery 29 and BeautyCon and the New Voices Foundation for helping to support this town hall. The stakes here are high, and we want to make sure that you all have the information, the resources, and the support to exercise your constitutional right to vote and protect your future. Please visit paintthepolls.com. Over the next few weeks and months, we will be adding more information and resources to the site. And please stay tuned for more town halls to make sure that we are keeping you as informed as we can through this historic election year. Thank you again for joining us.